Welcome to another bonus edition of Upon Further Review.
Upon further review,
And in this edition, we'll be talking about the Denver Broncos at the Seattle Seahawks. You can catch this Week 3 matchup on September 21st at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1:20 p.m. West Coast Time. And you can see that on your local CBS affiliate. So the Denver Broncos are heading to Seattle in a rematch of last year's Super Bowl. And the Broncos are heading into this game 2-0, and the Seahawks are 1-1. The Broncos have made big improvements on their defense, which was their shortcoming in last year's Super Bowl, as they weren't able to stop the Seahawks. And in the season so far, they won an impressive game against the Colts. The Colts did make a comeback in the second half, and then they won against Kansas City. Both of these games were in Denver. And the same thing happened. It was actually in both games, Peyton Manning threw 3 touchdowns in the first half, and then in the second half, the other team started to make a comeback, but it was the Denver defense, which seems to be one of their new strengths, as last year it was all about offense. This year they're more balanced and more defensive-minded than they were last year, and the defense is able to hold off their opponents from making these comeback attempts in the second half, as they held off the Colts and then they held off the Chiefs, respectively. So now they're going into Seattle, and the Seahawks are coming off of a disappointing loss to the San Diego Chargers after having opened up the season, the first game of the regular season on Thursday Night Football back on September 4th when they beat the Packers by 20 points and looked very impressive. But then last week in Week 2, that loss to San Diego, they struggled to run the ball. And that's the thing that's a recipe for disaster for Seattle. If they can't run the ball, then they're not going to be successful, because everything begins with Marshawn Lynch. It starts in the trenches, and then beast mode hits those holes, and that opens up the whole game for the Seattle Seahawks offense and their defense. It all begins right there. It all starts right there. Because once Marshawn Lynch opens things up, that opens up Russell Wilson to throw. Russell Wilson's still coming into his own. He's not the most prolific passer. He is really good at utilizing his feet to extend plays, and he can pick up yards on the ground as well. And he's very accurate, but they just really, he's still very young, and he's going to just get better and better and better every year. But the key to success for them is that running game that opens up their passing game, and then that also eats up the clock, keeps their defense fresh by keeping them off the field, by winning the battle of possession. And so then, the time clock, and then their defense comes out fresh and they just tear it up. But if they cannot keep the other team's offense off the field, they cannot keep their offense on the field, well, then their defense is going to get worn out. And then you're going to see what happened, with the Chargers, with Antonio Gates scoring those 3 touchdowns. So it's really the key here for Seattle is Marshawn Lynch, and it's running the ball. So if they can get that ground attack going, then they should be successful against Denver. And Denver is not, playing at the high offensive level that they were last year, so there's kind of more susceptible to that defense of Seattle. They also are having trouble running the ball, and the key for them is going to be, if they can get things going on the ground as well, is Monty Ball is not putting up the numbers like Noshawn was last year. So that offense there, that's why they're not putting up such big numbers, is they're not really as balanced as they had been. Of course, they are always going to be a pass-happy team with Peyton Manning behind center. And Peyton Manning, already 6 touchdowns on the season, no interceptions. He's, even though it's funny to compare to last year, because last year was a special year, NFL history was made by Peyton Manning. This year, he's not making NFL history. He's just an all-pro performance. You know what I mean? Any other quarterback would be envious of Peyton's numbers so far in the season. But just when you're judging him against himself, that's the only way you can say that there's less production, right? Because he just put up such monstrous, freaking ridiculous numbers in the past. But in this season, I mean, yeah, he's throwing, looking really good, throwing those touchdowns, 3 in the first half in each game. But then what's going on in the second half, and even in the interviews, Peyton's saying it's not like as if they just shut down the offense. It's not like they're not trying to score in the second half. What's happening is that teams are making adjustments in the halftime at the locker rooms. They make those adjustments. They come out and they shut down the Broncos. They figure them out. So far, both the Colts and the Chiefs were able to kind of figure out the Broncos at halftime and shut down the offense, but they weren't able to overcome the defense in Denver, which is much stronger this year, and that should lead them to back to the division title is the way it looks. Of course, San Diego is going to be giving them a run for their money. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there between the Chargers and the Broncos down the road. Right here in this game against Seattle, it's in Seattle, and the Seattle Seahawks are one of the best teams at home. Last year they were 7-1 in Seattle. They only lost the one game, and that was to Arizona, and that was a close game. And I'll tell you, you see other games they played at home that were close, games where other teams would have lost. The Seahawks found a way to win. They feed off of the energy of their crowd. They've got some of the best fans in all of pro football. The 12th man is like having an extra man on the field. That's how the presence, that's how loud it gets there in Seattle, is they just go completely insane, completely wild. They're 100% behind their team, showing them support is in any way that they can. And that kind of thing does make a difference. That kind of thing is going to disrupt Peyton Manning's timing, the offense of Denver, the snap count, the audibles. That's what Peyton lives on, is the audible. Is he comes to the line with like 3 plays or more already dialed up, looks at the defense, reads the defense, makes that quick read, picks the play at the line, and then, and audibles accordingly. You can't do that in Seattle. You can't do that with that 12th man, with that crowd. And as long as Marshawn Lynch gets it going on the ground, the Seahawks win this game. Their defense in the second half, when they come out, even though Peyton probably threw 3 touchdowns in the first half, like he has so far, right? But in the second half, the Seahawks, they come up with the turnover, the Legion of Boom. And I'll tell you, they are not losing 2 games in a row. After the way that they played against San Diego, they're going to come out strong here at home, and their defense is going to cause some turnovers. They're going to come back at them. I know the Broncos want revenge for the Super Bowl, but Seattle is going to come out here fired up as if it's Super Bowl Part 2, as if the Super Bowl didn't even happen, as if they're going to beat them again, and they're going to get just as fired up as they were for that game. I truly believe, and I believe the Seahawks come out and they beat the Denver Broncos. It should be interesting. It's going to be a much closer game than the Super Bowl was. This game is going to be this game that you wish the Super Bowl was, even though it was. Actually, I kind of enjoyed that way that one went, but this game will be the one that most people wished it was, in terms of it's going to be close, come down to the wire. Seahawks win by about 3 points. I see them winning by, something like that, maybe closer, not much further outside of that. I don't think they'll win by more than a touchdown. What do you think? I want to know. I'm interested to hear your opinions in the comment section below. Leave them down there. Tell me who you think is going to win and why you think they're going to win and how they're going to win. I hope you enjoyed this show, and I thank you very much for listening. If you did enjoy the show, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, as we're uploading videos almost daily.